We are live. Hopefully, you guys can hear me well. Oh yeah. I'm pretty curious if people can hear me or not. We'll figure this out in a few seconds when I actually see the stream myself. There's a little bit delay between me talking and then you guys hearing it. So, um, with that in mind, we were also reading comments with the delay itself. So that's pretty much what it is. All right. So um, as I'm speaking, I'm actually finished this render here. So I am going to. Can you or you cannot? Oh shit. Oh shit. That's weird. Can you say something?
Test, 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 test. Test, test, test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You'll probably be able to hear yourself now, but you can hear me talking on Twitch, right?
Now it looks like it's doing something.
That's fucking weird.
Yeah, I can hear me talking now.
Can you hear me talking though?
No, I can't hear you.
That is absolutely bonkers.
All right, now I can hear you. Bam.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Fuck. Fuck.
We'll get this down.
Yeah.
We'll get this down.
No, it's weird. I just freaking don't get it because I'm just using my regular setup and it should totally work without any issues. And now it's just it's just trying to play those games, playing those games with me. So we're back. I actually promised I will be I promised I'll be working in Photoshop, and you see 3ds Max, and you're asking yourself, dude, what the fuck? Broken promises again? No, all good. We're back in Photoshop. Don't worry. I actually just I was just finishing the render, and here it is. It's not the nicest render in the world, but I figured, you know what? I've been doing this for so long now. It was just so boring to watch it that I figure, like, fuck it. Like, we just actually have to move into Photoshop. I promised you I'm gonna do that, and I'll actually talk about some of the things that relate to this render and how this could relate to what you might see when you're working in games industry and what kind of implications come with it. So because as I'm creating assets in 3D, I have a full control of how much stuff I can do, and how much I can create and what shaders to add and all of those things, right? However, when I'll be working, for instance, with some game designers or someone else, I would not have that power. Basically speaking, whatever assets I'm getting, those are the assets I have to work with. So having that in mind, not every render is going to be perfect. So normally if I would work with a render, what I would do, every of those single elements you see, so if I do smart selection here, so like the staircase or the escalator, that would have a different material ID in 3D software. Those items right here, those columns and the whole booth would have different material IDs as well. We don't have material IDs here because it just takes time to set up. And by the way, as I'm talking, I can see you guys are writing that already. You can keep asking questions and ask questions whenever you like. John is here to collect them and ask them directly to me, interrupting me like a motherfucker.
Yeah. Was there a question asked? Because I just opened the page. And,
yeah. There was a question. There was a question about if we can ask questions. That was the question.
Okay.
Yeah, you can ask questions anytime. So please go ahead and feel free to do that anytime. I'll try to answer as best as I can. As you guys know, on those streams, I go really deep into those questions and tend to sort of lose my mind almost and stop painting and just looking at the screen. It's a pretty horrible experience. So, but I hope you guys enjoying it. So
That's what a lot of good educators do, apparently. It's just like they'll get lost in one question, just keep burying onto, just like
yeah,
keep going. It's awesome.
keep
It's really cool.
going.
It's because they're so full of knowledge they want to share.
Full of knowledge or full of shit.
So it's good.
um, anyways, so let's assume. So we're working in the hypothetical clavicles scenario, where I'm having a screenshot, or this is actually a render that I made from the scenes we've been working on a couple of last streams. And since the last time it was crushing, I just couldn't possibly finish the render, so I did it in the meantime. I was actually finishing another render because I wasn't happy with the first one. First one was too noisy right before the stream. So this is perhaps the most quality you're gonna get from a game designer, like, unless they are already working on a level and there is a lot of stuff that's being done. You're gonna get a screenshot like that. Now, the one thing you have to really pay attention to or understand is that this is a screenshot I composed myself. So basically, I picked and choose the camera that I wanted to use, and basically hit render and rendered it out. And this is where I am right now. However, in a lot of occasions, you're just gonna get a screenshot, and the camera angle can be really horrible, and you're just gonna have to work with that. If you have a possibility to talk with the designer and maybe do a screenshot together with him, so you can pick and choose the right angles that maybe benefit in terms of like composition of your concept, but also expose enough informations for the designers and artists that they can use it, then go ahead and do that. It's certainly possible that you're gonna have that possibility to do that. However, don't be surprised if not. If you're just gonna get a screenshot of like, how the hell am I supposed to work with it? So what I'm gonna do here is a little bit of that screenshot cleanup, and then go into how I actually compose things together in a very quick way. So it's gonna be involved with painting and a little bit of photo bashing here, because that's the fastest way to operate with this system. So I'm basically recropping. I wasn't happy with the fact that I'm getting a little bit of the tangent right here. This is being cut away. This is a bad idea to have, one of the major elements to be slightly cut from the frame. So if you cannot frame it in a way that you can avoid it, I would fix it in post, so basically in Photoshop. So basically recrop a little bit and then use content aware filter, which not always gonna work that great, as you can see, and then just go in and clean it up a little bit. So let me use some regular brush right here.
So one of the first questions for you says, what do you think of the job landscape for entry-level positions? Is it more scarce?
Is it more scarce? I don't know. There's way more jobs than it used to be. However, there's way more artists out there as well. So it's almost like double-edged sword right here, right? I mean, you have more artists, but you also have more job positions. But I think we discussed this with Leo when we had conversation with him on the Art Cafe, where the explosion of how many artists showed up and started doing concept art in last decade is staggering. There's just so many people competing. Go on ArtStation, go on DeviantArt, go on any other forums, and check how many people are posting every day. It's insane. When I used to be on CGen or or CG Talk or conceptart.org, I would see the same names everywhere. I mean, you would see some names that are new. You would see some new artists showing up every now and then. However, in most cases, the good artists that would be out there, they'll be the same names that you see everywhere else. So it's kind of, you would rarely stumble upon someone new and be really impressed. Like, oh, damn it! Like this is a really good art, and I haven't seen that artist before. Like, damn, that's awesome. Right now, if you go on any of those forums or any of those how do you even call ArtStation? That's not a forum. That's like a community, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah, like an art community. If you go on any of those art communities, you'll see art that is being posted by people have never heard about before, and it's really impressive work too. So the landscape is basically much more busy in terms of how many artists are out there. There's much more jobs too. The problem is because there's so many artists right now, the competition and the entry level of how much you need to know and how good you have to be in order to actually start working is way higher than it used to be. Because prior to that, it was, I guess it was a little easier, in my opinion, to get jobs because there was just not that many artists there at all. So
the next question here says, it says, haven't been here on the streams. What's that derpy light? Is it created randomly or create random lighting?
this one here on the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually decided. So the reason I did this, I wanted to do like a escalator that goes up as well, but it was actually hiding this element right here, which is, I wanted to have that kind of see-through element right here. So what I decided to do with this, I kept the opening there, but the idea would be that would be the major source of light. There's also another source of light that comes from the back of the scene, which you can see. However, I wanted to keep this because I figured, you know what, it could be a nice thing, like have a sort of like a ceiling, collapsed ceiling or something. There's something going on here. And maybe that could be also gameplay-wise something interesting where this opening is for a monster or someone else, like maybe some kind of assault that's going to happen here. This is where it's gonna come from, like not through the corridor or whatever. It's just gonna come from the top. Like that could be an idea, kind of throwing it out there. Someone was asking. That question is written in Polish. Kopia GPL. Yeah, I'm Polish. Just so you know, I just speak English right here. The only reason is because if I start speaking Polish, everyone would be like, "What? What the fuck?" Unless you guys want me to, I can speak Polish.
Do it.
I can speak Polish. Nah, you don't want to hear that. It sounds like a potato. So, like imagine potato could start walking, could start talking. That's how it sounds.
All right. Well,
I don't want to annoy people. No, it's fine. Let's move on.
The next question says, Maciej, your proportions are really accurate. Besides doing practices, what's the fundamental element that you've learned while practicing that helps you able to recreate asset from reference?
Let me think. So there's in terms of proportions, there's two aspects here. So proportions in anatomy, right, or proportions in design. So those are two different subjects. So proportions in anatomy come from just knowing anatomy. You just have to know anatomy, like study it. Go. There's so much material out there in terms of anatomy that it's really almost impossible to overlook it at this day and age. There's what was this guy's YouTube channel? Procop or Pro?
Proko.
Proko, yeah, Prokop. Prokop is actually was actually an MMA fighter, so it's kind of funny. I always mix those two together. They're both they both have sort of this Eastern European accent to it. One is from Croatia and just kicks your face in, and the other one is just kicking your face in with art. So. Um, So yeah, he has a great channel on YouTube. John, if you could link it on the channel, that would be great. And I love it because he kind of breaks down how to draw anatomy. It's pretty darn good, I would say. It's very entertaining to watch. It's very well laid out, and you can really learn a lot without even paying for anything. It's just like it gives you a lot of information on how to prepare yourself to draw anatomy and all that stuff. It's pretty good. I've been watching it myself. He breaks down on how to deconstruct elements of anatomy and everything like that. It's great. So when you learn anatomy, apart from just knowing what the anatomy is, and apart from knowing what elements human body is made of, and what are the proportions of those, and what are the proportions of human being, like how many heads make for a full body, so how many head lengths make for a full body, all that stuff. What are the proportions of arms, like how far they can reach when they're all the way down, like when you're just having your arm relaxed, and how far it's gonna reach, right? How muscles behave depending on how you bend them. So if you raise your arm, your pecs are stretching, and your chest started to look different. All those things are really important to understand and know. However, there's few things that for a concept artist is important to know as well, or sort of there are tools that are making anatomical or anatomy decisions much more easier, or much more forgiving. Let's put it this way. So first one is DAZ 3D. Obviously, you can basically pose a character in 3D and render it out and put it in the scene. Which, by the way, in this painting we're gonna do later down the road. I'm gonna put a DAZ 3D character in here. Noise. And basically that's like the easiest sort of solution, because DAZ 3D doesn't have like a perfect anatomy or anything like that. The way arms are bending and all that kind of stuff, it's still not perfect. The skinning is not done that well. I mean, there's some elements that kind of look weird. However, it's really good as a base. There's a lot of things you can really fix by just overpainting it. Also, what it allows you to do is just like do a lot of those foreshortening in perspective, where you paint a character in perspective and you don't really have to think about the length of limbs, because it's already placed in perspective. You just kind of render it and overpaint. Another option is using photography, obviously, and using photography just either to replace the character completely, or have a base of elements that you can paint with, and basically merge those elements together and create an interesting character. This is what I used to do, and this is what a lot of folks from Naughty Dog and a lot of my friends from Naughty Dog do when they create their concepts for whether it's The Last of Us or Uncharted. They would basically kind of take the iPhone camera or something, and picture themselves in the office, and then overpaint that. That's what I've seen. So many weird poses in front of my desk by Nick or Eitan or even Aaron. Like, they would just be posing in front of the iPhone. It just looks so fucking funny. But it's perfect. Sorry. Because
he wanted to also say, basically, he was asking more of the design side of things.
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna get into this in a second. No worries. Just gonna quickly finish this one then. Tight. But yeah, like posing to the camera and using your camera to get reference of yourself or of your friends. It's gonna save you a ton of time for drawing, unless you want to be a character designer or costume designer. Then knowing anatomy perfectly gonna help you. But I think the need to paint everything anatomically correct these days is not as important as it used to be. So that would be my few thoughts on here. Now, in terms of the proportions in design, because that's what you were asking for, and I guess this is a way more important subject. There are certain rules in the design on how to make proportions and how to combine things together. One of the most important rule that you need to understand is a rule of balance and how it affects your painting. So basically, if I would have my canvas, for instance, and let's picture this very simple scenario where you have your weight, right? And you can put two objects on each side, and the weight's gonna shift this line, right? Depending on, if you're gonna put something big right here and something small, obviously this is all gonna go down, right? But so in terms of rule of balance, you can understand, all right, if there's something big and something small and they're equally apart from the center, this is obviously gonna feel heavier. This is obviously gonna feel larger and whatnot, right? And you can understand the functionality of what this picture is basically saying. Now, what if you place that larger element right here and then smaller element right here? Or it'll probably have to be a little bigger. But now the balance is not that obvious anymore. Now you can see that perhaps this small ball that is on the other end of the weight. How do you actually call this? I've always been curious. Like, how do you call this kind of?
I can't see your screen. Is it like a teeter totter?
Yeah, something like that. But basically,
balance weight.
Yeah, balance weight. There you go. So basically speaking, if you place this element closer to the center, right, and this one further away, you could make an argument that this is gonna keep the balance, right? It's gonna basically stay in the right place.
A fulcrum.
Fulcrum? Yeah, I don't. Let's call it whatever the fuck. All right. So when you place two balls on whatever the fuck, basically, you can understand the balance, right? Now, another application of this would be, when you have large object like this and small object like this, there's a clear distinction of size, right? And now, what that does it mean for your eyes? One thing, it means that the larger object could be bigger or heavier than the smaller object, right? And that's assuming they're on the same plane, right? But what if the larger object, and I'm going to kind of move it a little more down, is actually closer than the one that is smaller, and this one is smaller. So in perspective, they would be like, this one be further away, or even taking this one even much further, like right here. Now, the size differences tell you that the one that is bigger is basically closer than the one that is smaller. So even though, like, if you would place them pretty much side by side, they would be probably same size. Obviously this is a very bad drawing, but the idea is staying the same, right? So if in perspective, they would basically be the same size. So if I make a perspective grid right here, you kind of get, all right, so even though this object is smaller, it is smaller just because it's further away. It doesn't mean it's actually smaller. So this is important because understanding those are actually two rules, and I go more deeper into those in my intro to environment painting class. I kind of explain some of the design rules that I use when I'm creating art. Yeah, what's going on there? Someone's banging upstairs. Banging. Don't get me wrong. They're banging some walls, not banging each other. So understanding some of those design rules, and it's very easy to Google them. There's certain design rules that apply. But basically, understanding size and balance allow you to determine if the object or if something that you're putting together is actually going to look good or not. So, for instance, let's say you're making, let's say a robot, right? I'm gonna draw like some kind of weird shape mech. You know, there's a robot here. Gonna have like 2 turrets. Let's do machine gun turrets or something, you know. Some kind of core, and then we want to attach legs, right? So if you draw like 2 tiny legs like this, it's gonna collapse. Like there's no way this this whole thing that you see here, that little that head with turrets, gonna stand on those legs, right? It's just impossible. So this is the clear example of the size difference, right? And the balance. Like right now, you can see that the front is much more heavier than the back. Like we could actually erase a little bit of that back and make it really thin. So this is not gonna hold at all. Even if you make the legs larger, I'm actually gonna use different brush here. Even if you make the legs larger, right, like this, I mean, this is gonna hold balance much better because the legs are actually leaning forward. And as I was drawing it, my brain was actually telling me, make those legs leaning forward, you motherfucker, and probably have like a little legs that go like here, because right now you didn't have that support on the back as well. So it maybe if I would make it more like this, more like a Z style, that would probably hold together a little better, or this kind of legs, right? But if I would drew those legs, for instance, let me use very quick stretch right here. The masterpiece of this is just insane.
It's just insane.
It's just, dude, this is the quality everyone is asking for when they're watching the stream.
We just got a new subscriber, by the way. Thank you.
Oh, dude, it must be this painting. What else? What else?
We need to have like a shout out for subscribers or something.
Yeah, dude, I
Thanks
think
for
there's an app.
subscribing.
Yeah, there you go.
Play
Thanks
some
for
music.
subscribing. Yeah, dude, we should do that. Like this kind of legs where they're like almost going all the way back, it's gonna collapse. There's no way this is gonna hold still in a place, right? It's just gonna collapse on its face. So when you design, whatever you design, right, you're thinking about function and design rules. And the 2 most obvious ones for me usually are balance and size. So, and this was a great example of, you know, how the balance and size can affect, you know, a little animation here. But anyways, so that would be my that's what I think when I work with my paintings, and when I work with everything, I think of those things, and I think about the balance. So for instance, good example here, sometimes camera distortions and camera angles that you're using can largely affect the way your drawing is going to look like. So for instance, you can see that this is correct in terms of perspective, in terms of what the camera lens been used, because it's a very wide lens, which means if you go further away from the center, everything will become more and more stretched. But what happens is that this part of escalator, this kind of wall kind of thingy here, is way smaller than this, and the distance between both is small too, which visually makes it look like this is huge and this is small. What the fuck, right? That's like sort of like your first impression. So even though it's breaking, I'm breaking basically the rules of how the camera would behave, like how the lens would behave. I've actually decided to balance it out a little bit, because I feel, even though it's maybe not following the camera correctly, like the lens properties correctly, visually it's gonna be easier for your eyes to look at, right? So whenever I have renders or anything like that, I like to do little corrections. I like to, break those rules a little bit, especially if they enhance the visual feel of the scene. Um, and it's because I want to have the size balance. I want to have the scale balance. I want to have the rule of size be affected here, and work visually the way I want it, not just because it's physically accurate. It has to look that way. I just usually, this is kind of cheating, but sometimes it's a good way to cheat.
Yeah, so we're halfway through so far. There's a lot of questions, just a
Yeah, yeah,
heads
go
up.
ahead.
But let's see. Then this next one says,
And by the way, you guys are asking questions. Not all of them gonna be answered. I mean, unless I would have unlimited time, that would be possible.
yeah,
But I don't. But I'm gonna try to answer as many as possible. So
yeah, whatever questions are asked first are gonna be
yeah.
that order. So, Maciej, you already asked that one. Do you think Octane is a must-have program to get? I'm sorry. Do you think Octane is a must program to get high-quality materials rendered, such as skin, leather, and so on?
No, I don't think so. By the way, I'm gonna mute my screen for a second because I need to find out something. And I'm gonna actually show you what I'm gonna do here. Okay, I'm ready to go. All right. So for those who use Wacom products, sometimes you're gonna have the exactly same problem I have right now. I'm gonna get to that question in a second.
Mm-hmm.
Is basically sometimes you're using a brush and it doesn't have that pressure sensitivity anymore. So the way I found out over the internet, I don't know who suggested that first. You can basically go to services in your whoops, basically minimized everything now. Damn, Daniel. You go to services and go to Wacom professional service, and then you go and restart that shit, and this should solve the problem. There we go. So now I should have my pressure sensitivity. There we go.
Sick. I needed to learn that too.
Yeah, I was always frustrated because like all of a sudden it would lose the sensitivity, and this is how it basically allows me to bypass that issue. So
Nice.
that's a good thing to know. I hope that's something you haven't heard about yet. So maybe a little bit of valuable thing. Going back to the renderer and the fact that whether you need a renderer A or B. We actually had a great Art Cafe conversation with Grant Warwick yesterday. It's one of the longest streams we had so far. It was 2 hours and 10 minutes. And we were talking specifically about renderers. So I really advise and really suggest to go and watch that. You'll know the consensus of what to do is it doesn't matter which renderer you are using. Obviously, there are better or worse renderers. The top of the line ones are working really great. If you have money and you have budget, then go with Octane or even V-Ray. If you don't have money and you're more on the budget, go with Corona or F-Storm. Those renderers will work fantastically as well. They're more limited, obviously, but they work well. They do what they're supposed to do, and you can create quite nice effects by using those too. The issues become when you have to go and do something really really complicated, and then you're lacking some features that are actually allowing you to do those things. So yeah.
Next question says, I haven't really seen much overpaint, or I haven't seen it used much, I guess. It says, are all your paintings done like this, overpainting?
For instance, when I worked on Last of Us, yeah, that's majority of work. It would start this way. I would be starting with
And it says
renders. Why?
Yeah.
There's several reasons why. So one reason is sometimes you just have to, because it's related to level that you're working on. So if you were working on the level with a designer, you're gonna give you screenshots and say you have to work within confines of that screenshot, because it's very important in terms of placement of objects, placement of elements, and all that, right? Second reason might be because it's just easier to work that way. It's much easier to have render and go with render and actually adjust it and tweak it than starting everything from scratch. If I would start painting this from scratch, I would have to create my guidelines for perspective. I would have to start constructing how this thing would look, and it would take me much more time. Whereas in here, for instance, okay, so we're looking at this column, for instance, and I'm gonna load in a texture that I got from textures.com, which is, by the way, a wonderful website. You should go in and check it out. Like one of those textures, what I could do with them is I could use, for instance, this one. Oops. And what I would do is when I have that little booth right here, I can basically texture it without painting everything from scratch. What I would do, match it so it looks correct in perspective, that is already there. I don't have to construct the perspective. Perspective is coming from the render itself. I'm gonna put it, let's say, on overlay, and I'm already having much more information that otherwise I would have to do in the renderer, or if I would want to paint it or maybe even photo bash it, it would be much more difficult to do. Whereas here is just applying a few elements, and from here I would go in and maybe use one of those brushes, the textured brushes that I have, and do a little extra overpaint to kind of make it blend nicer, But there's millions of reasons why you would go this way, and in majority of cases, they're always positive. Tight.
Next question says, Maciej.
Yeah.
It's in your different language. Sorry. Are salaries going down as much, or as the market is more saturated and there is so much supply? I just started and our salary was lower than I expected. Did you observe the same?
Well, talking about salary, for me, it's difficult to talk about it because I basically started in a very different world than it is right now, if you know what I mean. Like for me, the salaries back then were obviously different than they were now, but I also gained a lot of more experience, and I've been in this industry for quite a long time now. I've done quite a few things, so everything that I do and the experience that I'm gaining is basically leveraging the salary that I'm getting. So I know the entry level salaries right now are on. I can't even tell like how much in games industry you'll be making, because it's difficult. So one thing you need to understand. So nobody is talking about salaries in between one another, right? I think an average salary for not for junior, but for someone who's already having some experience in games would be, for concept artists, I don't know, 70,000 and up, especially if you live in California, which is kind of low for California, by the way. In terms of more seniority, the more senior you are, the more money you'll be expecting, and it just scales up. It really depends on your quality of your work and who you are and what they're expecting and who you're working with. It can go way up. But it's almost like an exponential or like this curve that the more the salary goes up, the way less and people are actually getting that salary. So eventually, someone who's on the top of top of the mountain, if you will, for how much they are earning. There are only going to be very few people that are earning like over $200,000 or even more, right? You can make that money in this industry, certainly. It's just not many people will. So that's the problem. In order to do that, you have to be Vitali, or you have to be, one of those killers, those killer concept artists that are out there. Not killers themselves, right? But like really, like when someone says your name in the entertainment industry, everyone knows that name, right? You're on that level that everyone knows who you are, and everyone knows who you are just by name because they associate your name to awesome art. If you're on this level, you're probably making over 200,000. I don't know how much Vitali is making. I don't talk about money with my friends. It's just pointless. So I cannot really tell, but I can tell you that best artists are definitely making over 200,000, but they are the best of the best. Now, in terms of whether the salaries are going down because market is more saturated, possibly. It depends on the company too. If you're landing in a good company, they are not gonna skim on your salary. They're gonna try to make you want to work for that company. But then again, like if you are working for a good company, for a good studio, that means you're already good enough. So it all boils down to your experience and to how much of a good work you can produce, what your portfolio is like. If your portfolio is kind of shitty, then your pay is gonna be kind of shitty. If your portfolio is amazing, then your pay is going to be equally amazing too. Although I know some artists that have amazing artworks and they're still getting shafted. So that has to be taken into consideration as well. It's not only about how much you can do, it's also how well you negotiate as well. There's some really good artists that could make way more money, and they just by making poor decisions are not making that. And and vice versa, there are artists that are maybe not as great, but they're making really good business decisions, and they are good at negotiating and talking their way in to projects. And those artists are making good money too, and their art is good enough for what the studio or client is expecting. So it's not like they're cheating or anything. They're just, taking a benefit of not only being an artist that is sitting in the dark room and making art and like, oh, money gonna come in someday.
Next one says, could you explain what creative directors do? For example, Neil Druckmann from The Last of Us.
So creative directors are... So this is an interesting term because in games, creative director means different than creative director in, say, commercials. Or there are slight differences. So in video games, for instance, in The Last of Us, Neil Druckmann was a creative director, but he also was helping to write the story and everything. Creative director is the person that basically have a full creative control over what the project's going to look like. Not what the project is in terms of gameplay or, like anything that is outside of artistic realm. That's something that creative director is not going to be doing. So think of art director, but almost like a step further. So it's not only art, but it's also sound, animation, like all of those aspects that are related to what the art itself is, or like the whole visual and audio of the project is, and story, right? So a story, that's something that creative director has control over as well. Creative director would work with writers and make sure that the writers are actually helping him to deliver his idea what the story is going to be like, right? So Neil was creative director for The Last of Us, and it was great to work with him because he was the guy who would work with story. He was the guy who would work with, a lot of artistic aspects, characters in particular. Um, and then we will also have game director, which was Bruce Straley, and he would take care of everything that is gameplay and game related. So from UI to gameplay itself, like how it feels to actually play, what is the pacing when you play, like for action sequences, when the action sequences happen, how fast, how spread out the enemies are, like all of those from very minimal, least important things to major brush strokes of what the game feels like when you're playing it. That's what would be game director's role, right? So those are two differences. I think in advertising, creative director is basically your boss. Like he is the person that has a full creative control over the product, and is making sure that whatever is being created is actually meeting client expectations, right?
This next one says, when you have to work on an interior piece for a client, how do you offer your idea to approval? Do you go to the final directly, or do any sketches to show them to pick, or how the process works? How does that process work?
It is really dependent on who am I working with, because there are clients that want to see the sketches, and there's going to be clients that want to see something that will inspire them. It all depends who you're working with, in some projects, I would just sketch and have few ideas in black and white sketches or thumbnails, or maybe quick renders, putting something together quickly in 3D and sending it out, and they would be judging based upon that, like, okay, let's go this direction or let's go that direction, and that would usually be accompanied with references too. So I would give them like a full spectrum of, almost like a pitch, right? This is a potential directions in which this image or this particular subject could be going to. But there are clients that are just want to be inspired. They are hiring you because they trust you that the output that they'll get from you is going to be good, and they don't need to direct you in a specific way. They're going to give you a brief and references and the ideas you have to work with, and obviously that's going to be something that confines your output, but they're not going to be picking, okay, I need 5 sketches before I make up my mind. No, like they will settle on that one thing you sent to them, because they already from the get-go kind of trust you and want to work with you because they know that you're the right person for the job, right? So it's like a mix. I in my experience, it's 50-50. Sometimes I almost go to the final and deliver really nicely rendered image with the design, and sometimes I'm just producing sketches. It just depends on the project.
Next question is, can you talk about Dash 3D and how it will help or helps with concept art? What should we do to get started taking advantage of its tools?
Well, if you can take advantage of a tool, you should, basically, regardless of what that tool is. And Dash 3D is one of those tools. It's being widely used by concept artists everywhere, whether it's games or film, commercials. If you can, just use it. It's very easy to learn. It's free. It doesn't really require much of a time investment to actually understand how it works. It's very self-explanatory in terms of the UI. It's a little frustrating at times in terms of UI as well, and in terms of the setups. They actually made it a little better over years, but generally speaking, knowing how to use it is only going to benefit you, because you'll be able to, especially if you combine it together with other 3D software in which you can render. It's a win-win scenario, because you're basically going to post something and render it out, and it's going to look good or good enough. And you can do the rest of the work in a 3D application or or in Photoshop, right? Whereas if you would have to find the right references, photos, or paint from scratch, that would be much more time investment. So one of the reasons to use different tools and learn tools like DAZ 3D would be because it's going to save you time. That's as simple as that. Because if you have a character and if you pose the character, if you render that character, you can render it with different lights, with different camera angles, with different poses in a matter of minutes, or I don't know, within an hour, you can produce probably a couple of renders. Whereas if you would sketch the character and you would have to sketch it and have the same quality output that you would have from DAZ 3D, by the way, it would take you days. Like it would take you much more time to render that lighting on the character, first to construct the character, and then render the character. You know, it would be a pretty horrible thing to do in terms of time commitment. So
The next one says, somebody wrote in Polish again. I'm not sure if it's a question, but you could read it.
we're gonna scroll up. Where was that?
I just sent it to you in Skype.
Oh, on Skype. Let me see.
But this one says, if you want to improve how do I improve my composition? Should I learn photography, and why?
Can you repeat? Sorry, I was reading the other question.
How should I improve my composition? Should I learn photography, and why?
Well, learning photography will help in a bit, but composition itself is a set of rules, really. You know, there's certain rules in terms of how you compose, and those rules apply regardless whether you're painting or doing photography, actually, because if you don't understand composition rules, then you'll not make good photos. So that's like, you know, just learning photography just to be good at composition, that's not the route you should be going with. A better idea would be to, like, as easy as it sounds, Google composition rules, and you're gonna have certain rules that are easiest to digest, and then you're gonna have usually those rules with examples, and you just follow the examples and follow those rules and then apply it to your work. It sounds a little easy and dismissive, but this is basically how this really works, and how you should approach it. In order to actually practice, though, practicing composition could be made in a different ways. Like you could practice composition by doing film studies. That's a perfect way to practice composition. You could practice composition by doing master painter studies. So you take I don't know, Da Vinci's painting or Caravaggio's painting, and you examine it. You try to figure out what kind of compositions rules are in there and why, and you actually paint it yourself. Because like when you do sort of like a master copy and study, you also have to think about composition and have to understand why those elements are placed in those places. If you just copy by just observing and looking, okay, this is here, this is here, this is here, and this is how I'm going to paint it, that's probably not going to get you anywhere, apart from maybe getting better at painting. But if you really examine how the painting is being painted, why it's looking certain way, why the characters are placed in different places, and what is the distance between them and why, and like understanding those rules will help you with compositions, definitely. And then from there is just practice. It's just really practicing different compositions. So you make a decision, okay, for this painting, I'm going to be going with the rule of thirds. For the other painting, I'm going to go with the symmetrical composition, for instance, right? And you can go on and go on. You know, I think rule of thirds is pretty much the easiest one to understand and apply, because it's usually going to help the painting to be like, let's not put it good, but balanced in a way that you can understand and see whenever whoever's gonna look at it, if you paint in rule of thirds, it's gonna be much more pleasant to look at it than if you break all the rules and kind of paint it like I don't give a fuck and just kind of compose the way you like it. Yeah, like for instance, there's a rule of balance which is directly related to the balance in design, which means you're balancing your composition by placing objects strategically by size and distance, that so that across the image they are balanced, right? So if you place something in the far corner, like so for instance, this escalator right here is balanced with that booth basically. Without the opening, the bright opening, this booth would be a little bit too big and it would feel unbalanced because it would feel like the composition is falling over. But with the opening, those three elements sort of balance each other. So that could be sort of like the way you look at it. I am painting this and I'm not thinking about composition because my brain is already so used to painting that way that it's sort of like informing me subconsciously that this is what you have to put there. And then when I look back at it, okay, I'm doing it because of that rule. I'm doing it because of this. And I'm understanding it afterwards. But I'm not thinking about it when I'm doing it because I've been doing it enough. And that's basically the goal, really. Like you want to be able to have that ability to do a lot of things on the fly where you don't have to think about design, or you don't have to think about composition or anything like that, because it's sort of automatically coming towards you together, right? And you understand quickly, okay, I'm doing this because of that, and that's because I practiced it for years. I've been doing rule of third paintings for years. I don't have to think where the guidelines or the the points are in which, or the crossing guides where I have to put my character. I know it already where it is by just looking at the image, right? So it's practice with understanding what the rules are and applying those rules in practice, really, and then examining if you're deciding to do studies, examining those paintings or film frames or anything like that with the context of what kind of composition rules are there.
Cool. So it's almost 7 o'clock.
Yeah, we can go a little further. That's fine.
Can you talk a little bit about negotiating your price?
Negotiating a price. So when you decide to negotiate a price with someone, with a studio or something, you have to be aware of what you're worth. If you are someone who's just starting and you have zero experience in the industry, you don't really know what you're talking about, and you're coming in and, hey man, pay me $2,000 a day. Well, that's gonna be just insulting, right? But let's say there are certain dollar amounts that are average for the industry. Ben Morrow was posting like a breakdown of how much you can expect. I don't remember exact numbers he was posting there, but it was a good breakdown on how much you can expect when you're in the studio and when you're freelancing. Your salary range is going to be different in US than Europe as well. By average, US pays more money than Europe. But then again, you also have to look into what kind of benefits you're getting from the company you're going to work with. If you're in US especially, working without health insurance is probably a very bad idea. And not having health insurance. And sometimes it's a better idea to actually take a little cut in terms of how much you're getting paid in exchange of having those benefits, right? So for instance, if you decide that you want to be self-insured and you want to be self-insured in US, it's certainly possible. It's going to be usually a couple of $100 a month. So you have to take that into consideration. If the studio that you're going to work with is offering If they offer you, hey, you can earn, let's say, $4,000, $6,000 a month working for us, but you're not gonna get health insurance. But if you want to have health insurance, you're gonna earn $5,000 a month. Let's say it's 6,000 versus 5,000. Then obviously you're gonna take the 6,000 because buying your personal health insurance in US is gonna be cheaper. It's gonna be fucking expensive, but it's still gonna be cheaper. It's not gonna cost you $1,000. It's gonna cost you probably a couple $100 depending on how well you want to be covered. But if they say, it's $1,000 difference, but it's also 401k involved, well, then you have to think about it because 401k is really important. You want to not only insure yourself for accidents and health, but you also want to have that retirement benefits too. There's a lot of artists that don't think about retirement, which is scary because eventually you're gonna be obsolete. Much like sports, unless you are having so much experience and you're great, there's gonna be always younger artists that are gonna be better than you. So you have to take into consideration that maybe when you're 80 and you think like, I'm 80, I can still paint or do whatever. Maybe that's not going to be as easy as it sounds, and maybe having that little cushion of having those benefits is a right choice. Earning a little less, but having that benefits for the future. So.
Next one says.
Oh, sorry. So I didn't continue. So how you sorry, because I missed pretty much the right answer for this question. I kind of broke it down and I didn't actually say how you negotiate. Well, be aware of how much you're worth, right? And how many offers you're getting. Don't be afraid to say no. If it's a project that if you're not against the wall that you really need money because like otherwise you're going to die from starving or you're not going to be able to pay rent, well then if the project is not paying what you feel you're worth, then say no. If you say no a couple of times and then you're not getting work, then you're probably judging yourself higher in terms of your skill than you really are. And maybe you should go down with the pricing a little bit. There's one rule that kind of works, is very simple to apply, and there's actually a few rules that you should think about when you want to apply to whether you're working with a studio or a freelancer and you're negotiating prices and whatnot. So one thing that is pretty obvious: never work for free. Fuck it, no matter who that is. Like, working for free is the most stupid thing you can do. If someone is telling you, yeah, but you're gonna have like exposure, like, well, I can get it. You can get much better exposure by just posting on ArtStation. The only exposure you're gonna get is the asshole that is shitting on you, that is saying you work for free for exposure. That's the only exposure you're getting. Serious clients, whether they are directors, art directors for big companies, will rarely ask for free work. I don't think I had anyone who's serious ask me to work for free, because that's like the most stupid thing you can ask for a professional artist. It's just insulting, and you should always be, saying no. It's different when your friends are asking for your help and you're working with them towards a project that you are working together. If it's friends and you're doing it out of passion, and you both reaping benefits, if there are ever any benefits, if you're both reaping benefits together, then by all means do it. Because it's a passion project. That's something you do on the side. But in professional work, never work for free. In terms of how you negotiate better price, well, the best tool to negotiate is knowing when to say no and having really strong portfolio. And that's as simple as that. And all sort of this political meanders of like finding the right language and explanation of how awesome you are and all that stuff, that kind of comes with experience. There's no really a blueprint how to do it. The more your best weapon is always going to be your portfolio. If you have strong work, you're gonna get offers, and if you get enough offers, then you can leverage how much you're making. If you get 5 offers at the same time, you can choose the one that is paying the most, and that's going to be your baseline for future offers, you know? So you can leverage how much you're making by taking jobs that pay you better. Sometimes it's a good idea to maybe take less paid job just because you're working with a specific director or person, you know, especially if you're having an opportunity to work on something big, something that can potentially big, or something that can potentially give you a lot of connections, you know, but maybe it's not the best paid job. Then maybe that might be an opportunity. You know, there are studios out there that have ungodly amount of money, but they do stupid, shitty projects, right? And they will pay you well, but you're gonna be fucking, I don't know, painting wood logs for 6 months straight. You will want to kill yourself by doing that, right?
Somebody posted the price that Ben Morrow is talking about.
Perfect.
By the way.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, you know, you can expect sometimes getting that 500 as a freelance contractor. I know from talking to people, it's not easy sometimes, but it all depends on the clients. You know, there are some just shitty clients that don't want to pay as much, maybe because they just don't have budget, and that's understandable. You know, there's always gonna be work for someone. Like if there is a client who is paying 300, they'll find a person that will work for 300, but that's gonna be a $300 quality work. You know.
So you mind if we take 2 more questions? Because I have to.
Yeah. It's fine.
Cool. Next one says, question: is it possible to enter a AAA companies if I don't have any game making experience?
Of course. A great example is Eitan Zana. He had no experience whatsoever, and his first game was Uncharted 3. So he's a good friend of mine, and he was I think he was at Otis design or fucking school, whatever. Otis is here in LA. It's a school in LA. And he was there, I think, for a year or two. But he was working his ass off in order to get as good as he could, apart from just attending school. And he was noticed by art director of Naughty Dog. You know, Rob Ruppel was at Otis at that time, and he looked at Eitan's work, and they talked. And a few months, like I don't remember exactly the story. I think when I was doing an interview on Art Cafe with Eitan, he was actually giving us a good breakdown on how it actually happened. But basically, yeah, it was, you know, Rob Ruppel was at the Otis, and he saw Eitan's work, and yeah, let's get you hired on a contract, and that's how it happened. Again, it was his portfolio, nothing else. He didn't have any experience or anything like that. It was just his work that basically got him hired, and that's always going to be your strongest tool. That's always going to be your strongest, weapon to fight against people that are trying to take advantage of you. Because if you have really good work, and if you're a nice person too, like if you're an asshole and you behave like an asshole, then nobody will hire you, no matter how good you are. But if you're generally decent person and your work is good, you're gonna get hired. So
there's three more questions, but let's lightning around this.
Yeah, sure.
So can you talk about average pipeline for a studio? I realize every studio is different, but what's a good goal to shoot for, to be accountable and keep your position, to be valuable, i.e. certain amount of sketches a day or ideas per day?
First of all, I think so. Everyone has a different speed of work. I wouldn't worry about speed of work unless you're horribly slow. There is no specific amount of sketches you have to do. It's so hard to say. I mean, sometimes there are some people that are great at sketching, but they suck at rendering, you know? And so if you compare yourself to them, you're going to sketch 10 things. 20, he's going to sketch like 20 sketches. They're going to be amazing. Whereas you're only doing 5 and they're shitty. and like, oh shit, that guy is so much better than I am, but he cannot render the shit. Like now, finish the illustration. He's gonna struggle for a week, and you're gonna have it done in a day. So don't really look at that in terms of speed. It's like me comparing myself to, let's say, John Park, right? John Park is a freaking amazing human being. He is the fastest sketching person I've ever seen. His sketches are incredible. He's basically devouring everyone in terms of sketching and painting. Ask John to do something in 3D. Go. You know, he doesn't do any 3D, and it's not because he sucks at it. He's never done it before. I know he wants to learn it, but like just sort of to give you an argument. Even the best in the industry, sometimes they are not the best in everything. So, there's no guideline. Just be nice, play as a team member, and try hard if you need to. If you need to work harder, if that's the case, and that should sort of like help you in order to get the balance. If you're a team worker, if you're not having ego because like you have to change the painting and now you're flipping out like, oh fuck, like it's a wasted work. No, it's not. It's wasted for you, but it's not wasted for the project, right? Maybe you had to see something that doesn't look the right way to understand that this is a wrong direction. So now you're painting it once again because it's going to work that way, or maybe it didn't work in that specific scenario and has to be done differently. So yeah.
This next one says, Maciej, I'm really interested in a mentorship in your character design class on Learn Squared. I'm an experienced designer but fairly new to 3D. Is there anything I should prepare before taking it? When is the next opening round?
So in terms of openings for the mentorships, we will be opening mentorships on the platform that goes to me and Ash and some of the other teachers as well. It's just we don't know yet when. I'm planning my schedule right now. I need to be considerate with what I'm doing with the new class, my work, family, and everything, because mentorship means there's a specific time commitment that I have to allocate for this, and I want to be sure that there's nothing interfering with it. So when I commit and open up the new courses, you're guaranteed that we're delivering the best quality and the best experience during that time. So like it would, the worst thing I would want to have is like open up mentorship and then something happens and I have to like move a class or something like that. That just fucking sucks. Like I don't want to have you guys going through that. So I'd rather spend maybe extra month or something in terms of deciding my calendar and making sure that you guys are getting the best of the best, and then actually deliver on that experience instead of just promising, oh, just sign up, pay me money, and it's gonna be good, and then I fucking suck at it. Like no, I'm not gonna settle for that because I just don't want to do that. So we will be opening classes. We'll be obviously announcing when that happens. We're gonna give you heads up so you can prepare. It's just I don't want to give you ETA yet because we're doing some few interesting things with the school, and we're getting new interesting teachers, and there's a lot of work related to that as well. So all of us need to have focus in the right place, and there are some things that have to come first before we open up new classes.
To hear about the classes first, you just make sure you're signed up to the newsletter.
Yeah,
that's the first place it's going to go to.
Yep. Thank you, John. Yeah.
And then this one says, it's the last one. It says, is it any difference between first person and third person game making?
Oh yeah, there is a big difference. From concept perspective, maybe not so big, but there are definitely differences in terms of how you design, how much attention you pay to specific things. It's more difficult on the gameplay aspects and for 3D artists and whatnot. For concept artists, there are small differences really. When you're doing first person designs, for instance, you're designing weapons or elements of first person, whether it's first person shooter, for instance, you would design weapon differently than you would design it for third person, because you're gonna look at the weapon from the first person, not third person. So you're gonna look at it from almost like a iron sight mostly, or on the hip, where you're gonna just see the weapon sort of shooting out from your screen. Whereas if you have a character running on the screen, you see the full character, then you see the weapon from all sides, and then you design it differently because like how the camera works and how it looks. Something that looks great in third person might look horrible in first person. So there is just small different approaches, but in general, I guess like in terms of environments, there's not really that much difference.
And that's it for today.
Cool. Right, so we'll be wrapping it up as I promised. House painting in Photoshop. A few words in what I was doing here as I was talking, so just so you get a little context on what was going on here. So right now what I'm trying to do is sort of populate the scene with what I feel is going to be here. So I started to adding like a little bit of rubble. I'm probably going to make the opening bigger and make it so that it actually collapsed on the escalator. So the parts of the escalator is going to be blocked, but still you're going to be able to walk through it. You know, and basically it's just going to be an abandoned mall at this stage. Maybe I'm going to put like some kind of character that's exploring it or maybe hiding from someone. We'll work it out together when we are doing it together. What else? I did some retooling. I've discussed why I've changed the shape of the escalator. My usual workflow here is going to be exactly what you see. And this is how most of the artists that design realistic environments, this is how they work. This is what by the way, what you see here, the way my understanding of perspective, my understanding of design, my understanding of how I match textures and how I make sure which textures work here and how I design those things together. I go over it from scratch, from the very foundation in the environment painting class. And that's one of the reasons that why I made that class, because I wanted to make a foundation for what how I think about those things and how I design those things and why I place certain elements here and there, and and how to make it look so it's cohesive in a painting. Obviously, we're covering a little bit of that here on the Twitch stream, and I try to talk about it as much as I can. But if you want to have it in a format where you have it in a lesson in one place where you don't have to look through dozens of streams and videos, that's where the class is. In terms of questions, other questions, we had those few questions of if the streams are going to be available to watch later. Yes, so basically as soon as those streams end, if you're a subscriber of a channel, you can watch it right away. Afterwards, we're converting it and sending it over to YouTube, which is going to be posted at a later date. So if you don't want to wait, like, fuck it, I want to watch it again now, you can do it by subscription. If you want to wait a little bit more and you don't care, like, I can watch it later, I'll rewatch it later, you'll be able to do it for free always. It's going to be posted on YouTube at the later date. So that's basically what we're doing here. That's it, I guess, right, dude?
Yeah, and the pace that you work at is much faster too. You're talking about the whole thing, right? But instead, like you're probably like 70% faster.
Oh yeah, I mean, even when you, oh yeah, of course. I mean, even if you watch the class itself, the amount of time I spend, there's so much more I'm explaining in the class itself, and the workflow is much faster, obviously, because I'm not streaming live. Right. I'm not answering questions and talking with you and getting distracted all the time, and and trying to sort of like split focus on both things. Yeah. So not only we're having something interesting going on where I'm not sitting and fucking painting and not doing anything, and there's just a dead silence going on.
In terms of getting this far with this whole thing, without all that, how long would you say this would take you?
So we've done, how many streams we've done with this painting so far?
7, 6.
7, 6. That would be like 2 hours. if less. Yeah. If less.
That's cool.
When I worked at Naughty Dog, so let's say I will be doing painting with the one of the paintings I did for the military city, Boston, right? I was getting some help. Actually, you know what? There was this painting I did for The Last of Us. I'm gonna actually put it up the screen right now. Give me a second. I'm gonna quickly find it. There was one painting that I did, which was a checkpoint, and I basically designed it in Maya. I basically built it in Maya and rendered it real quick. It was just boxes, very similar to what you saw here. And from there, I just did overpaint, and I think I've done it I've completed that painting with going back and forth with Bruce, because I was working with Bruce directly at the time. The the project didn't have art director when I started. I think it took like a day or maybe a day and a half to get it in a place that looked kind of good, and then another 2 days of back and forth. This is the painting I'm talking about right here, this checkpoint. So it was built in 3D, like all those rails were built in 3D, and I was just overpainting it and then going back and forth with game director in order to sort of like decipher, okay, what the gate's gonna look like, just go really in detail and refine and retune everything that we can. Like every single thing you see here was really well thought out between me and him. We were just going back and forth. There was no randomness that we were just putting. Even like the blood splatter and the amount of shit that you see on the ground, like we were discussing how much shit's gonna be on the ground, we had like meetings about it, and what this helped to do. One of the reasons we were doing that is because we wanted to create language of what the game is going to feel like. When I joined Naughty Dog and I started working on that game, that's what I was helping with. Not only just creating concept art, but really working with Bruce directly to sort of help to push it out of that Uncharted realm. Because, Uncharted has its own very specific style, and it would definitely look great as a game, but it would feel more happy if it was done the same way that it was done as Uncharted, right? So what I wanted to bring in, and one of the reasons that they hired me was because I had that little different edge to how things look like and a different approach to it. So we would go really into details of how vegetation looks like, how to produce those elements in the environment, where it's going to be overgrown, how much stuff you're going to see on the ground, what kind of stuff you're going to see on the ground, why the ceiling collapsed, and why there's wetness, where is this wetness coming from. We had like countless meetings and discussions about it. And what happened is, because everyone was involved in those meetings, and we had arguments, we were having good times too, but everyone was involved, from animators, artists, 3D artists, like everyone, texture artists, lighting artists. Everyone was on those meetings. We had like a group discussion and joint effort. What happened is almost like we were teaching one another what this game is going to be, and it helped to almost make every single place in the game, like when you play the game and you go into like a random room, it doesn't feel like a generic random room. There's always some kind of story behind it. There's always like a small detail, where it's like family pictures or toys. They're not like randomly scattered because like, oh, this is a fucking element that we can use as a prop. No, like it always has a theme that was very specific to that place. And one of the reasons is because we had that brainstorming and we were discussing those things and going back and forth. And I can show it. I mean, I know it's kind of bloating and sort of self-congratulatory to talk about this game, because it's one of the best games that was ever made. Fucking, I'm not gonna lie.
True that.
But it was that experience, and that experience that I got out of it helped me to look at environment painting in a very different way than I used to. So
Sick.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks, Jay.
Let's wrap it up for now. I'm gonna see you guys next week, exactly same time. We're gonna be going more with the Photoshop here. We're gonna stay in Photoshop until the very end. taking my time and pacing, making sure that you see everything, and I want to answer all the questions that I can, obviously, along the way. If we're missing any questions, sorry for that. Sometimes we just cannot answer them all, but we're going to try. So let's wrap it up. That was a good episode, guys, and I'll see you next week.
Yep. Peace out.
Peace out.